Hello, I recently transitioned from being an avid rider of regular bicycles to a rider of recumbent tricycles, better known as tadpole trikes. The tricycle I selected was a 2012 model Catrike Road. I thought that I would take a moment to share a few things about the trike for those who might be interested in tadpole trikes in general and the 2012 Catrike Road in particular. A tadpole trike is essentially any recumbent tricycle with two wheels in the front and one wheel in the rear, which is the drive wheel in most cases. Tadpoles are generally used by people who either feel insecure riding a regular bike for one reason or another, or just enjoy the low profile. In my case, I have arthritis of the neck, lower back, and also loss of cartilage in my wrists, which makes riding a regular bicycle very difficult and painful. And even though I've experimented with various models of recumbent bicycles, I didn't really like any of them and decided to try the tadpole, and well, one ride and I fell in love. The tadpoles are not stodgy vehicles. They're sporty, comfortable, perform beautifully, and in my case brought me back to riding from a period of several years of not being able to ride. A few particulars about the Catrike Road, especially the 2012 model, which is the currently available model. The wheel track is 29 inches, the total width is 32.5 inches. That would be from wheel to wheel. The total length, 75 inches, which should be from the rear of the rear wheel to the front of the cranks. The seat angle can be varied with a quick release adjustment from 39 to 47 degrees. The weight is listed in the specifications at 37.5 pounds. It has about a 17-foot turning circle, or an 8.5-foot radius. It's designed to work with riders of less than 275 pounds weight, which would be most people. Catrike has what they call an X-seam measurement, which you can get from their website. It's not the same as the inseam, quite a different measurement. And the X-seam measurement is rated from 39 inches with the boom retracted to 46 inches with the boom extended. Now this is the boom here, and there's a quick release here with two quick release levers, which allows the boom to telescope in and out. Now it's a structural boom, and it's keyed so it won't twist or rotate. Of course, once you telescope the boom, you have to adjust the chain length, which is not automatic. The component set is quite nice on the road. The brakes are an Avid brand disc brake. You can see there. The chain rings are listed as a 30, 39, 52. The front tires are 406 Schwalb's Marathon Racers. It has a SRAM Monarch adjustable pressure shock in the back. It's an important characteristic of the Catrike Road that it's one of the few tadpole trikes that does have rear suspension, and I think it's the only one that has the suspension geometry through this linkage here set up in such a way that the shock does not compress when you pedal stroke, so it doesn't take power from your pedal stroke to compress the shock, and you don't feel it in the pedaling at all, unlike some of the competition. But it does make the difference between having your brains rattled badly on a rough road and having a fairly smooth ride. The Catrike Road's rear cassette is a 9-speed unit with a SRAM derailleur. The road actually has two idlers. There's the front one. There's the rear, which is also a little bit different from some of the other tadpoles out there. I think it's more of a deluxe feature. It comes standard with a rear fender. You can get them for the fronts, but the rear one is standard. It comes with a left rear view mirror, a set of reflectors front and rear. The headset is put out by Catrike, but it is an option. It does not come with it. The high visibility flag does come with the trike. Flip over pedals, one side for regular shoes, the other side has a clip on it. A few words while we're on the subject of pedals. In my view, it's imperative when riding a tadpole tricycle to use some sort of a clipless pedal system. SPD or some other type of your choice. I use the SPD system with the 2-hole mount on a pair of shoes that have a decent walking surface. They're not road shoes, they're more like a light mountain shoe. The reason for having a clipless pedal system on a trike is the same problem that plagues certain recumbent bicycles, such as the under-seat steering models. Essentially, you have a bar that goes across from left to right, and your feet are up in front of you, not below you like they would be on a bicycle. And if your feet were to drop off the pedals, say because your legs are tired or you hit a bump, and if one of your feet hits the ground while you're rolling forward, it will pull your foot back underneath the bicycle, hitting that crossbar front, which is between the two front wheels, and you essentially roll over your own leg. This is not a good way to break your leg. It's not going to be pretty. At the very least, it's going to hurt like crazy, and probably you will have a significant injury. So for that reason, if you're going to ride more than just, around the block or something, you really want to have a clipless pedal system. So regardless of how tired you get or what kind of bumpy road you're on, your feet aren't going to fall off and hit the ground while you're rolling. The computer is not included. I chose a model with a fairly large display since it's a bit further from my face when riding than it would be on a regular bicycle. Wanted to be able to see it clearly. I consider that the visibility is the primary downside of a tadpole trike, so I think it's imperative to have the rear flag on, the reflectors, a strobe type headlight. This one has a nice light for nighttime use, or you can put it in a pulsing mode. And it's very noticeable even in bright daylight. When I ride, even in the daylight in the middle of the day, I can see the light reflecting off of roadsides considerably up ahead of where I am. Likewise, some sort of a rear flashing light I think is very important for visibility. Now, I'm not the type who usually uses a rear view mirror on a bicycle, but one concern I do have with a vehicle that's this low to the ground is riders or cars not seeing me when I ride on the roads. Even if I'm on the shoulder, some drivers who are using their cell phones or generally inattentive might drift onto the shoulder, and I want to be able to see them coming so I can take evasive action. That's really the only reason I use the mirror. Besides the front light, the rear light, and the headrest, some other options I got for my Catrike Road include a hydration pack. It's your standard Camelback type unit, although Camelback does not make a pack for a tadpole type trike. So this is put out by Fastback, and it slings over the top of the seat post with a heavy strap, and then has another strap which wraps around the base of the seat like this, that secures the bottom. And it actually holds it quite nicely. It stays out of the way of the shock mechanism, and it's very easy to get at the hydration pack for refilling it. The drinking hose goes over your shoulder and clips on with a little clip onto the collar of your shirt or jersey, and there it is, very easy to use. In addition, Fastback has a tool bag which can go on the back of the hydration pack, and in my case I found this very useful for keeping a set of tools, a spare inner tube, a pack of Kleenex, and a few other emergency things. Now it's going to be a little hard to see it here, but down here where my fingers are pointing is another little pouch, which is actually part of the seat as Catrike provides it. So that would be a useful thing to put a wallet or a few items in if you don't have all these other packs that I've added. But it's not big enough to put all the tools and other things such as I've got it. There are also additional Velcro loops on the back for securing various things. There's a pouch back here. I'm not really sure what's intended to go in here. Catrike doesn't really advertise their intentions, but I think you could probably put a pump there or any number of things. I carry a CO2 refill kit myself, so I don't have use for that. One of the things that is very slick is down under the right-hand side of the seat with a Velcro clasp on the zipper is a cell phone pocket. It's big enough to hold most smartphones, and I have a great big Droid 4, and it's probably one of the larger ones, and it fits in there just fine. Again, it won't fall out, and it's pretty well protected from most spray and rain and so on. I think it would stay pretty dry if you were riding it in the rain. The seat is a webbing type seat. It's quite strong, very comfortable. One thing about the Road is that it's a general purpose tricycle. It's not the highest performance model, nor is it the cheapest. It's actually one of the most expensive in the Catrike line. It's a very deluxe model, but it's not a racer. You can see that the wheel sizes are not that large, and indeed, using the large chainring in the front and in the largest ring in the back, and at a pretty good cadence, my speed is only about 18 miles an hour. My cruising speed is about 15 miles an hour, and it can go as low as 12. So this is a bit slower than my regular road bike, but I'm not out to set speed records, and that's still a pretty decent pace. Catrike does make a model with a larger rear wheel if you really need the speed, but then that model doesn't have the shock absorber, so you have to take your pick. Getting into the trike is a little different from a bike. I usually step in like this, step over the bar, turn around, put my hand on the top of the wheel pivot, and then sit down. Clip in, and off you go. This is the view you usually get when riding, and I intend to do a little video while riding and add it to this video. Rear view mirrors right there. Hand grips, your elbows are by your side, very comfortable. There's no strain on your wrists, neck, back, anything, and you're in a very comfy posture, much like you would be in an easy chair, but it's very good for pedaling. I do find that it took me a little while for my knees to get used to the different posture, but after 3 rides or so, it was like second nature. Felt like I'd been riding it my whole life. The Catrike has direct steering, and it's very sporty in feel, but very stable even at high speeds. There's a separate brake for the left, and another one for the right. They only brake their own wheel, but the bike is quite stable, so it doesn't tend to veer off too much to one side if you only brake with one brake. You can steer a little bit by grabbing a brake really hard, and it kind of jerks the bike slightly to the side, but only by a degree or so. It's not very dramatic. Shifting is done by turning the grip, but only the base of the grip, about this much of it. This part is stationary. This part you turn to shift the front chainring, and the right hand handles the rear shifter. It's not easy to see which gear you're in. There is a little indicator here, but it's I find it's a little hard to tell where the pointer is, especially once it goes around to the side. I mostly have to tell by feel which gear I'm in. Getting out of the trike is a pretty simple matter, even for an old guy like me. Just a matter of sitting up. I put one hand on the top of the steering post or on top of the hand grip, either one. Get up to a standing posture, and you can either step out the way you got in, or in my case I just swing a leg over and step out. Somebody who's a little less limber or might have balance problems, you can just get out the same way you got in, which is again pretty straightforward. Or another way is to simply straddle walk off the bike. So there's many options. When I first rode the Catrike for the first season, all summer in 2012, I found that the flag kept popping out of the little holder here every time I hit a big bump. I called Catrike and they said there's this little slot in the holder which had no apparent purpose. Turns out it's there to put a tie wrap around, and that keeps the flag from popping out. And it's easy enough to cut the tie wrap if you do want to remove it. All the wheels are quick release, just like on a regular higher end bicycle. One thing the Catrike does not have that some of the competitors like Ice have is a way to grab the brake and hold it so it doesn't roll away from you if you're parking it on a hill. What they give you instead is this handy Catrike Velcro strap, which you can wrap around the hand grip and hold it in place. I'm not too fond of that myself. I think it's a little kludgy. I think they could have done better. Another word about the Catrike headrest, which I think fits all of their different models. It's quite adjustable. You can slide it up and down quite a ways to different neck lengths and head heights to fit the rider, and it toggles back and forth here. It tilts back and forth this way. I have it adjusted so the back of my head is usually about here, a very comfortable riding position, with my neck straight just like it would be if I was walking. And the only time I use the headrest is when I'm climbing a long hill and I have to shift into a fairly low gear to do so, and it just gets a little boring, so I lean my head back and daydream while I'm pedaling up the hill. But other than that, I don't use it, and you probably don't really need it in most cases. One thing I like about the Fastback pouch for the Camelback hydration system is the way you can access it from just the one side. It's obviously intended for this. And then of course the Camelback has this quick release, which I'm trying to do with one hand. It allows you to leave the hose routed, but pull out the bladder for refilling. And then once it's filled, it's simply a matter of zipping up and making sure you've got water. There you go. The aforementioned cell phone carrying pouch with this little Velcro clasp to keep the zipper from coming undone. There it is. Everybody has their own way of getting into the clips. This works for me. I think we'll do about 35 miles today. One thing a lot of people wonder about tadpole tricycles, and pardon the jerkiness here, it's kind of a rough piece of road, is the width of the machine and whether that causes problems. I found that the typical tadpole is less than a foot wider than the handlebars on a regular bicycle, and as such it's not really occupying that much more width, although it certainly gives that visual impression. Right wheel fairly close to the edge of the shoulder, put myself about on the white line, a little bit to the right of it, and then I'm barely hanging over the line on the left side. One of the things I worried about before I got started on tadpole trikes was it looked like they had to be really heavy with a lot of rolling resistance compared to, say, a road bike. It seems like that's probably got to be true, but it doesn't seem very apparent to me. There are 3 wheels instead of 2, and they're slightly wider than a typical road bike tire, so there's a bit more rolling resistance, but I think it's a negligible amount. The machine weighs probably twice as much as a typical aluminum road bike, but again is also lower to the ground, has I think less air resistance, more aerodynamic, and I found that I can ride quite easily on windy days with very little effort compared to what I would have been doing on a road bike under the same conditions. Another thing that I wondered about, and I think many people wonder about, is fishtailing on tadpoles, which is the tendency to wander back and forth a little bit with the stroke of the pedals. And I did find initially that there was some fishtailing, and it just went away as I rode more. And I think, as with many things, you just have to get used to the balance and evening out the power stroke, and eventually the problem goes away and it's very stable. Tadpoles are kind of slow on hills. You can't use any weight on the pedals, so your only recourse is to shift down and spin up them. One downside to recumbent bikes in general, especially the ones where you lay back further, and tadpole trikes, is that instead of your usual posture on a bicycle, leaning a bit forward with your head aiming down somewhat, here you're leaning backwards and looking straight ahead, or maybe even slightly upwards. And if you're riding with the sun low in the sky in front of you, it gets a little annoying. It's a lot harder to avoid that than it would be on a regular bicycle. Still experimenting with different visors for my helmet to try to block it out, much like a shade would be on a car. And Another thought that occurs to me that worried me before I bought my trike and has since been resolved is with a bike, if there's a road obstruction, whether it's a pothole or a rock or what have you, it's a fairly simple matter to steer around it. With a tadpole, you've got 3-wheel tracks instead of 1. So how do you deal with that? Well, I found that it just happened automatically. I didn't even have to think about it. I'm not shifting down on this hill because I'm holding the camera with the wrong hand. Here I am spinning up a long hill and not even doing a very good job of spinning. My cadence is pretty low. I already mentioned earlier in the video about the concern of leg tuck or leg suck, depending who you ask, which is what happens on any tadpole trike. If your foot comes off the pedal and hits the ground while you're rolling forward. And I mentioned how important it is to be clipped into your pedals one way or another, preferably with a clipless system. Another thing to watch out for is, in order to get the wheelbase or the wheel width as narrow as possible, still have room for your at your sides for the handlebars. The wheels are really just outside, so it's important to know how much room you've got here for your fingers. Of course, if you do stick your fingers out, the tires just brush them and it doesn't really get caught in anything. It's not harmful. It's a beautiful morning for riding. It's only about 55 degrees out here. In case anyone's curious, this ride is in the area of Illinois, the extreme northeastern corner of the state, just south of the Wisconsin state line, only a few miles from Lake Michigan. Heading north here, coming up on Highway 173, US Highway 41. It's only about a quarter-mile off to the right, paralleling this road, and I-94 is only about a third of a mile off to the left, paralleling this road. Just up ahead here, I-94 and 41 will merge at the state line. Here's 173. Looks like the coast is clear. Another peculiarity of recumbent bikes in general and tadpole trikes in particular is that since your head is back really close to the rear cassette, you hear a lot more of the noise of the rear derailleur and the idlers back there than you would on a regular bicycle. And obviously if you're coasting, you hear the ratchet a little louder than you normally would. I tune it out, don't really notice it unless I'm really thinking about it. I stated earlier that I really like to have a flashing white strobe on the front of the bike or the trike to make sure that it's visible to oncoming traffic, and a flashing red strobe on the back for the same reason, for overtaking traffic. I've been advised that it's illegal to have a rear-facing white strobe, so the only one I have that's white is facing forward. But as you can see, the area where I do a lot of my riding is an equestrian area, and my understanding is that horses don't really like the flashing lights. So it wasn't on the video here, but I just passed a couple of equestrians off to the right who were holding their horses and turning their heads away from the trike, probably because the horses would rear up or get nervous if they saw the flashing strobe. So that's just something to be aware of if you're riding in an area with a lot of horses. This doesn't really have anything to do with trikes, but I do try to seek out less trafficked roads whenever possible. It's just more pleasant, and especially on the trike, it avoids most of the concerns about having a lot of car traffic, and maybe one of them doesn't see you being down low to the ground. By the way, this is I-94 up here. While I'm climbing another hill, I thought I would answer another question that a lot of people have asked: where did you buy that thing? And really that was a bit of a problem. Where I live in the greater Chicago area, there were only 2 dealers at the time this came out that I knew of that carried Catrikes, and one was about 2 counties away, and the other one was a bit closer, about 1 county away. Neither of them had the Catrike 2012 Road in stock. It would be a special order, and they required that I would take it regardless of whether I liked it or not once I saw it. So I'll put in a bit of a plug here. I drove up to Stevens Point, Wisconsin, to a great place called the Hostel Shop, and they're a major Catrike dealer, and were happy to place a special order for me. They knew they could sell it, even if I decided I didn't like it when I got a chance to see it in the flesh, so to speak. So that came through. I've been very happy with it. I returned the trike after the first season to them for its free maintenance and servicing, and it's really needed nothing. It's been bulletproof and reliable so far in these 2 years of pretty steady riding. Like today, it's a bit colder. And I also decided that I could dispense with normal cycling shorts, Lycra shorts, and went with these. They're made out of, I don't know if it's Gore-Tex or what it is, some sort of a breathable synthetic. Very comfortable. They've got little straps on the legs so they don't billow out with the wind coming in when you're forward facing like this. but yet they're, you know, there's no need to have padded shorts when you're riding a recumbent, so I find these are more practical. I just love this road here. It's nicely shaded, kind of scenic. It's the kind of road that makes me want to get out and ride. It's got a bit of a undulation in the surface, so it's up and down a little bit. Makes it interesting. One of the nice things about a tadpole trike is that you don't have to do anything different when stopping at a crossroad or any other place where you'd have to stop. You don't have to put a foot down, you don't have to clip out, you don't have to worry about falling over like you do on some kinds of recumbent bike. You're just sitting here like you're in a lazy boy, waiting for the traffic to clear. Although there is one gotcha. With a regular bike, you might not have to shift down before stopping because you can always sort of stand on a pedal and get that extra torque required to start rolling again. On the tadpole, you can't really do that. So I have to always remember to shift down a few gears before stopping, so I'll be in a reasonable gear to get started again without undue stress and lots of moaning and groaning breaking away from the stop. And this wonderful cycling road here, in spite of its need for a bit of repavement, is a good example of why I have lights, flashing lights on the trike. You've got this mottled shadow pattern, which, while very nice to ride in, would render me pretty much invisible to cars if I didn't have the flashing lights. I've been asked many times about cornering on the tadpole trike. I find that it does a pretty good job. It doesn't lean like a bicycle, and this can make it feel like there's a lot more G-forces. And I find myself leaning into the curves, even though the trike itself isn't. And then there are questions about turning radius. Let's see, I'm checking my rear view mirror, no oncoming cars, so just turn around within the width of a road easily enough. No sweat. That was fun. I think I'll do it again. More great thoughts as they occur to me. One thing I discovered when I started switching to recumbent bikes and then the tadpole trike was that I was at greater risk for sunburn, which really surprised me. I've been riding my road bike regularly since the 70s, and I don't think I ever once got a sunburn, even on full centuries on hot, sunny days. I didn't usually use sunscreen either, even though found that the fronts of my legs and my face and neck were getting sunburned. And all I can attribute this to is on a regular bike, my legs are kind of under the shadow of my body a lot of the time, and the way my head is angled, it tends to keep my face somewhat in the shadow of the helmet, or leaning forward a bit just in the shadow of my head. Whereas here I tend to be leaning back more and my face is catching more sun, and the legs are always facing up. There's no shade or shadow on them, so they're going to get more sun. And the same goes for the fronts of my arms if I'm not wearing a long sleeve like I am today. So that was something I learned. Always lather up with that sunscreen before doing a ride at any length on the This is a typical view in the rear view mirror. See the oncoming traffic pretty well this way. I like this better than a helmet mounted mirror. I find that I can ride fairly well, no hands, as long as I have an even pedal stroke. The trike keeps going pretty straight. Here's another place where visibility is always a concern. Pulling out on a busier highway, have to make sure that the cars see me before I pull out. I also ride my high wheel bicycles on this same route, and there the visibility is not as much of a concern. Finally, we're in Wisconsin. Just crossed the state line there with that little road we jogged on. I generally find that the quality of the roads in Wisconsin is considerably better than those in Illinois. Hill to spin up. Another thought on the different muscles that seem to be used when riding recumbents, especially the kinds where your legs are so far out in front like this. really horizontal instead of the usual vertical orientation relative to your body is, at least I find that sometimes my toes will go to sleep after riding for a couple hours. So I keep sort of wiggling them and exercising them inside my shoes as I'm riding. And when spinning up a hill, seems to be an especially good time for that because I'm pretty relaxed, and also when going up a hill my legs are even more elevated relative to the body. And if I do find that's a problem, then I just get off and walk around for a couple of minutes to get the circulation again. Another great thought that occurred to me is the Catrike, I think like most tadpole trikes, is in fact equipped with an area on the boom which will accept a standard water bottle cage. Now I find that it would be a little awkward to reach it while riding. I'd have to sit up in the seat. This is another reason. Let's see if I can get it in the camera here, where I find it's just a lot easier to just take a drink from the camelback and leave it laying there on my chest. There's an ultralight airport here, which I go past on my normal ride, and a lot of times there will be these ultralights buzzing around out here. Today it looks pretty quiet. I don't know why. It should be a beautiful day for flying. And in most rides there's some time when you have to ride on a not very nice road. This is Highway 45, just a couple miles north of the Wisconsin state line. It's rough and busy and high speed, but at least it has a shoulder wider than the trike. Ah, yes. Cornfields are indeed a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, I don't think the camera is picking up the flashing as well as it really looks. But that's another thing I never used to bother with, any kind of lights on my road bikes, unless I was riding at night, of course. And with the trike, I feel like I do need the lights on there and I only get about 3 rides of probably 3 hours each out of a set of batteries before the lights go a bit dim. Alright, phase 2. Really your bathroom. Of course, in the fall they cut all that stuff down and the opportunities become somewhat diminished. Doing a slow spin up this hill, and makes me remember something else I wanted to talk about, and that was even on my road bike I used to try to pull up a little bit as part of the power stroke after all the shoes are clipped in. I think it's even more important to get a nice circular pattern with your feet on the pedals to try to even out the power flow as much as possible. And this is because of the different way you use your legs on a recumbent than you would on a regular road bike or mountain bike. Or maybe it's just me getting older. But I find it that my knees hurt if I don't do it that way when riding the trike. And if I do even out the power flow, get the stroke nice and even, pull back with one foot while I'm pushing with the other, and so on, then my knees don't hurt at all. Also, the even power stroke contributes to the trike not fishtailing when going down the road. If I do stroke hard and can't get a nice even flow, what if I am cranking hard and don't get a very consistent power flow to the pedals, especially not so much going up hills, but especially when really trying to get up to a higher speed on a straightaway, I find that putting just a little bit of even pressure on both handlebars, either forward pressure or backward pressure, also tends to even out the ride and reduce fishtailing. going uphill. So I'm still spinning up. This is one of the places where I'm glad I've got suspension. It's pretty rough right here. Here's our old friend Highway 173 again. Now we're in the town of Antioch. 3-hour ride here. And I hope that this video has answered a few questions about tadpole tricycles.